Nothing feels good anymore. There was a king in ancient Greece named Tantalus, cursed by the gods to stand in a pool of water beneath fruit trees. The water came up to his chin, the fruit hung just above his head, and every time he bent down to drink, the water receded. Every time he reached up to eat, the branches pulled away. He was surrounded by everything he desired, and could taste none of it. We gave this experience a name. We called it Tantalize, and somewhere along the way, we built an entire civilization around it. You have more access to pleasure than any human being in history. More music, more stories, more connection, more stimulation. And yet, you finish the show, you close the app, you put down the food, and you wait for the feeling that used to come. It doesn't. Something has changed. Not in the world around you, in the way the world lands. You can feel it in small moments. The meal that should have satisfied, the show that should have captivated, the night that should have been enough. They arrived, they passed, and left less behind than they used to. This isn't sadness. It isn't burnout in the way that word is usually meant. It's something quieter, a flatness underneath the functioning, a gap between what experiences look like they should feel and what they actually do. Psychologists have a name for the state this produces. But before the science, it's worth asking the question most people in this position never quite get to. Not what's wrong with me, something more precise. Why does having everything feel like having nothing? That question has an answer. It lives in the neuroscience of desire, in the history of the human reward system, and in what happens when a brain built for scarcity is placed inside an environment of infinite abundance. What researchers now call dopamine burnout. Not a diagnosis, a description of a system running at maximum capacity for too long with nowhere left to go. This video is about that system, how it works, how it broke, and what it actually takes to feel something again. There is a fading memory in the back of your mind, a memory of the last time something genuinely surprised you with how good it felt. Not just fine, not just okay, but the kind of good that made the world stop for a second. For most people, that memory is already lost in the gray noise of the present. There's a specific kind of modern experience that nobody has quite named yet. You plan something, a trip, a dinner, a night you've been looking forward to, and when it arrives, you're there, you're present, you're doing the thing, but the feeling underneath it is flat, not bad, not ruined, just less than it should be, less than it used to be. You scroll through 1,000 songs and can't find one that hits right. You watch 3 episodes of something and feel nothing by the end. You eat the meal you've been craving all week and finish it without ever really tasting it. Not because anything went wrong, because the machinery that was supposed to produce the feeling didn't fire. This isn't depression in the way most people understand it. There's no sadness, no collapse. Life continues. Work gets done. Conversations happen. From the outside, everything looks completely normal. It's something quieter than that, and considerably more confusing, because you can see that things should feel good, intellectually, that you're fortunate, that the meal was good, the trip was beautiful, the show was well made. You just couldn't feel any of it land. Psychologists have a name for this, but before the science, it's worth sitting with the question that everyone in this position eventually arrives at. Not what's wrong with me, but something more precise. When did this start, and what exactly changed? In ancient mythology, Tantalus wasn't being punished with pain. He was being punished with proximity. Everything he needed was right there and permanently out of reach. The Greeks understood something that took neuroscience centuries to confirm. The cruelest form of suffering isn't absence. It's the gap between desire and satisfaction that never closes. Your brain was never designed to be happy. It was designed to want. Dopamine, the chemical most people associate with pleasure, is not actually a pleasure chemical. It's an anticipation chemical. It fires before the reward arrives. It's the feeling of reaching for the fruit, not the taste of it. And once the fruit is in your hand, the dopamine is already looking for the next branch. This is where the pattern begins. For most of human history, desire had natural friction. You wanted something, you worked for it, you waited for it, and the gap between wanting and having was long enough for anticipation to build into something real. That gap is what made arrival feel like arrival. Now the gap has been engineered out of existence, and with it, the feeling. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation, the brain's capacity to normalize any level of stimulation. Whatever you experience repeatedly, consistently, and immediately, your nervous system begins to treat as the baseline, not as pleasure, as neutral, as simply the way things are. The problem isn't that you've become ungrateful or numb. The problem is structural. You are running a biological system built for a world of scarcity inside an environment of infinite abundance. The architecture was designed to make reaching feel rewarding. When reaching is removed, when everything is available immediately, frictionlessly, the reward system has nothing to anticipate. It fires into a void, and over time, it fires less. The baseline keeps rising. What once produced a strong signal now produces almost none. The show that would have captivated you for a week is finished in a night and forgotten by morning. The meal that would have been an event is scrolled past before you've tasted the last bite. The experience arrives, registers briefly, and dissolves, because the system that was supposed to hold it open has been conditioned to move on. Researchers call this Anhedonia, from the Greek, meaning without pleasure, not a diagnosis, a description of what happens when a system built for scarcity is forced to run inside infinity. Not depression in the clinical sense of collapse, something more functional, more invisible, more contemporary. The person with anhedonia continues. They show up. They perform. They laugh at the right moments. But underneath the performance, the reward circuitry has gone quiet. Researchers now distinguish between two separate systems within pleasure itself: wanting, the drive to pursue something, and liking, the actual experience of enjoying it once you have it. These are neurologically distinct, and in conditions of chronic overstimulation, wanting can remain intact while liking quietly disappears. You still reach for the fruit, you just can't taste it anymore. Which is precisely what makes this so difficult to recognize from the inside, because the hunger doesn't stop. It just stops being satisfied by anything. You can see it in the small moments. You open your phone without knowing why. Not boredom, not curiosity, just the reflex, the reach. You scroll for a few minutes and put it down, then pick it up again 30 seconds later, not because something changed, because the hand has learned to reach before the mind has decided to want anything. Think about the last time you sat in genuine silence. Not meditation, not a walk with music, just nothing. No input, no stimulation, no screen. For most people, that silence lasts about 40 seconds before the hand moves. Before something is opened, something is checked, Something is started, not because the silence was painful, because it was unfamiliar, and unfamiliar to a system trained on constant signal registers as threat. The problem isn't that nothing feels good. The problem is that the space where feeling good used to live has been colonized by noise, by the permanent low hum of content, always available, always one tap away, always offering the next signal before the last one has resolved. And the cruelest part is this: the system that produced this condition presents itself as the cure. Feeling flat? Here is something new. Feeling empty? Here is something louder. Feeling nothing? Here is something designed by engineers who study exactly what makes a human brain stay awake one more minute, watch one more video, feel one more small pulse of almost something before the emptiness returns. Tantalus reached for the fruit because the hunger never stopped, and not because he believed he would catch it, because reaching was the only thing that felt like doing something. The first shift is the hardest to accept. There is no app for this, no optimized routine, no content that will fix the problem that content created. The solution to hedonic adaptation is not better stimulation. It is less, not as punishment, as recalibration. What the brain needs, what it has always needed, is contrast. The experience of low before high, of silence before sound, of absence before arrival. Without the valley, there is no peak. Without the hunger, there is no meal. The system was designed for a world where pleasure was rare enough to be felt. The work now is to reintroduce rarity into a life that has eliminated it. This is what researchers call friction, the deliberate restoration of effort, waiting, and uncertainty into experiences that have been made frictionless, not suffering for its own sake, but the recognition that the gap between wanting and having is not an inconvenience to be eliminated. It is the mechanism through which satisfaction becomes possible. Read the book that takes 3 weeks instead of watching the summary. Cook the meal instead of ordering it. Let a conversation be slow. Let a walk be silent. Let a morning pass without knowing what everyone else is doing. The second shift is about attention, specifically, and where it rests when nothing is demanding it. For most people today, attention never rests. It is always directed, always occupied, always mid-reach. The practice is not meditation in the formal sense. It is simply the act of letting attention land somewhere and staying there, on a cup of coffee, on the light through a window, on the specific quality of silence in a particular room at a particular time. Not because these things are profound, because noticing them at all requires the system to slow down enough to register something. And registration, genuine registration, is where feeling begins. The third shift is the quietest and the most important. It is accepting that the return will be slow, that the first walk without music will feel like nothing, that the first meal eaten without a screen will feel incomplete, that the first silence will feel like absence rather than presence. The system that was calibrated to infinite stimulation does not recalibrate in an afternoon, but it does recalibrate. The research on hedonic recovery is consistent. The capacity for pleasure does not disappear. It goes dormant. And dormant things, given the right conditions, return. Not all at once, not dramatically. The way color returns to a room when someone finally opens the curtains. Gradually. And then, suddenly, completely. The story of Tantalus wasn't about punishment. It was about the architecture of desire itself. The gap between wanting and having that never closes. The reaching that becomes so automatic it stops feeling like a choice. He didn't suffer because the water and fruit were cruel. He suffered because he couldn't stop. Because the movement of reaching had replaced the experience of arriving. There is something quietly important in that distinction. The emptiness you feel is not evidence that pleasure is gone from the world. It is evidence that the distance between you and the things you reach for has been engineered down to zero. And without distance, without the gap, the wait, the uncertainty, the arrival registers as nothing. Because there was no journey. Because the system that was supposed to feel the landing never had time to prepare for it. The fruit is still there. The water is still there. You just need to stop reaching long enough to let them come to you. Tantalus was cursed to reach forever. You are not. The reaching is a habit, a reflex, a pattern so well practiced it has stopped feeling like a choice. But it is one. It always was. The path back to feeling is not found in better content, louder music, or more optimized experiences. It is found in the restoration of something the modern world has quietly eliminated: friction, waiting, the gap between wanting and having, the very mechanism through which satisfaction becomes possible. Let the show arrive. Let the meal be what it is. Let the conversation be slow. Let the morning pass without knowing what everyone else is doing. Let the signal complete before the next one starts. Your brain has not forgotten how to feel. It has been conditioned to move too fast to notice that it still can. And the recalibration, slow, unglamorous, and almost absurdly simple, begins the moment you stop reaching long enough to notice what is already here. Tantalus could not stop reaching. You can. To continue this understanding, watch the next video here, and to understand human behavior at a deeper level, subscribe to Decoded Way.